Welcome learners. We are going to study political science class 10th textbook, which is titled as Democratic Politics. In this book, we are going to understand the nature and structure of political institutions. You have already been introduced to the subject of political science. Although of course we are studying it in a package of called as social science, but this social science includes number of sub-disciplines. What are these disciplines? These disciplines are political science, sociology, history, geography and economics. In sum total, social science is a study of society, and society is made up of number of institutions. Institutions such as political institutions, economic institutions, social institutions and rest of the things that we are engaging in everyday life. Now in this particular textbook, we are going to focus on political institutions. Now what is political institution, or for that matter, what is politics? You must have heard about this concept of politics in everyday life. If you listen to news channels, you must have seen politicians talking about politics. You might have heard your father or mother saying that there is too much of politics in offices. You might have also heard this concept in number of other occasions and number of other places. Now what is political and what is politics, or what are political institutions? This is what we are going to learn here. In social sciences, all these social, political, economic institutions are part of our everyday life. It is very interesting to explore that how these institutions influence our thinking, our life and everyday functioning. Now let us focus on politics. What is politics? What is political institution? Now whenever we talk about societies, we tend to take number of decisions. Look at India or any other country, or all across the globe you have so many countries spread across various continents. And all these countries are big countries, they have big populations. Now imagine if there were nobody who was governing these institutions or governing these continents or states or something like that. There will be a total chaos. I'll give you one example from your everyday life. You go to school every day. In your school, everything is systematic, everything is timetabled. Say for instance, you know at what time which class will happen, which teacher will come, in which room you have to sit, where do you have to go, what is the lunch time. So your life is timetabled. You know everything in advance and everything is arranged or laid for you. Similarly, our societies which are big in population are governed by a certain set of rules and regulations. These rules govern our life, everyday life, and make it smooth and systematic. Otherwise, imagine if there is no timetable in your school, how would you identify who is going to teach you which subject and where to sit? There would be disorder. Similarly, if you apply this example to everyday life, you would come to know that certain rules, regulation, laws in our life make our understanding of the world easy. We live a disciplined life. We do not confront a kind of disorder or a chaos. Political systems are actually a study of the systems of governance. What is governance? That somebody is there in authority who decides about all other things of our life. That is, who to govern, how to govern, whom to address, what laws to make. These are the aspects of governance. You must have heard of the concept of government. Government looks after the governance, and they are responsible for making rules and regulations. There are many concepts in the field of political science which we are going to learn in next few years. For example, I would say in class 10th, 11th and 12th, or probably if you take up political science in future in higher education. Now let us understand the concept of democracy, which is the title of this book. What is democracy? How did it come into existence? You must have heard of this concept of democracy, which is broken down into two subcomponents, demos plus kratos, which is demos means people and kresi means the rule or the governance. Now democracy came into existence at a particular point of time in history. If we talk about democracy in history or in political science or in sociology, you might come across this word. It was discretely there, present in ancient societies as well, such as you must have heard of Greece, Athens and all those societies and cities. Now democracy in its modern form came into existence as a consequence of French Revolution. In history, you might have come across the idea of French Revolution. Now, let us understand the origin of the concept historically. Prior to democracy in its modern form, the societies or the regions or the empires were governed by monarchs, the kings. And the king was supposed to be the representative of the God on earth. And he is the person who is responsible for taking all the decisions about society and well-being of the people. Now, monarch had the authority, absolute authority. And this authority was passed on to his children from one generation to another. So, successively, people were ruled by kings and their son, and further down the line. Now, what happened when the power was concentrated in the hands of one individual who was also supported by the religious institution? In Europe, it was church and the clergy, which was hand in glove with the monarch. And whatever decisions they used to take about people's life, those were the final decisions. And nobody was allowed to question the authority of the monarch because he was considered to be the representative of God. And if you question him, that means you are questioning the God himself. And questioning the God was blasphemy. So, what happened for a long period of time, in fact for centuries altogether, there was a rule by one individual which was form of domination. Now, this would not be an equal society or a just society. During French Revolution, number of philosophers, number of activists, they started thinking about challenging this kind of system because there was influence of the era of enlightenment. Once again, you must explore the concept of Renaissance and enlightenment. It was a brief period in history. I am saying it brief, but it spanned for 200 or 300 years. So, there was a time in history when people started questioning that why are we not questioning what is there out in social system, in political system, in economic system. Everything in the world is seen to be taken for granted as given by God. But people started questioning these orders. People started questioning the taken for granted nature of the world. And they started asking questions about their interest, about their benefit. And this is how French Revolution started, and they started challenging the authority of monarch. And in a series of events which culminated into assassination of monarch himself, French Revolution established democracy. And the motto of French Revolution was liberty, equality and fraternity. Now, what happened? With this revolution, demos, that is the rule or the authority, came in the hands of the people. And they started deciding about their fate. Who will govern us? How will he govern us? For how long will he govern us? And what are our own interests? And this is how democracy came into existence. The modern form of democracy that we see in India, what we practice in India, is actually a rule by people. That is, I as an individual or anybody in the society who is above the age of 18 years is eligible to vote. Every single vote counts. When people vote in elections, they get their fingers inked. That is, it is a proof that you have voted to the democratic functioning of your society, your state or your country. Now, in this particular chapter, we are going to focus about power sharing. What do we mean by power sharing? And why do we need to share power? Now, let us connect all these concepts with one another. Say, for example, we have just talked about government, we have talked about governance, we have talked about democracy, and now power sharing. Now, once in a society or in a system you decide that we are going to share power, or XYZ is going to represent us, or these people are going to form government, we tend to give them our consent. That is, we legitimize them. That is, we give them our agreement through election, through the process of election. This is a machinery, this is a system, this is a mechanism in which number of parts play an important role. Say, for instance, our country is democratic. So, we decide to choose or elect our government. How do we elect it? We elect the government through the process of election, which happens regularly in a particular interval. Say, for instance, after 4 years or 5 years. After these elections, we tend to choose people, those who are going to govern us. We tend to give through our votes, power, consent or agreement to these people that you are chosen one, you are the elected one and you are going to decide about the rules and regulation. Then these people formulate policies for you. These are the people, those who are responsible for legislation or making laws. And then these laws are imposed upon people and then our lives become disciplined. Anything you pick up in your life, anything which is related to a small thing, say for example, family laws, or you have criminal laws, or you have domestic laws, all these things which are influencing our everyday life, even traffic, which is governed by certain rules or laws, these are formulated by people, those who have been authorized by us to govern us. Now, why do we need to come to this situation? Imagine a situation from where monarchs were replaced and they were replaced by common people, people like you and me. You must have seen around that common people, people in everyday life whom we interact with, sometimes these are teachers, sometimes they are bureaucrats, sometimes they are social servants, sometimes they are businessmen, they tend to contest elections. We vote them or we do not vote them. Those who are voted into power, these are the people now responsible for formation of government. But this entire process of election is a process that justifies the value of equality. Now, in democracies, when I participate, when I vote, I am confirming my participation in the process of democratic functioning or in democratic institutions. Now, this is how the democratic machinery functions. If you don't vote, you are not participating in it. But as a responsible citizens, you have a right to vote and you must exercise your right to vote. Now, democracies is primarily we divide into two forms. One is a participative democracy and the other one is the representative democracy. Now, what's the difference between the two? In participative, we tend to participate directly into the process of decision making. Say for instance, if your class teacher decides to take you out for a picnic. Now, she says that we have two locations in our mind, A and B. Where should we go? And she asks students to vote for it. Suppose you are 50 students in the class, 35 vote for location A and 15 vote for location B. So, the majority tends to vote for location A. So, 35 students want to go to A, so teacher would decide to go to A. This is a direct participation in the process of decision making. However, in big societies, in nations, in states, there are a large number of people and you just cannot throw any question in front of them to actually vote for it in favor or against, because all the decisions are not as simple as yes or no. There are many aspects of it, because if you take one decision, it will have number of positive and negative outcomes. So, in these cases, we tend to use mechanism called as representative democracy. We choose our leaders. These leaders are part of legislative machinery. They tend to make and then they vote. Recall some of the instances which you have seen regarding voting in the parliament about a particular law which has to be passed. Talk to your parents that how and where they have actually participated in direct democracy or indirect democracy, which is participative or representative. You yourself in some years of time are going to become part of this political institution. First, you will vote at the age of 18 years and you will be participating directly or indirectly. Politics is actually about the process of decision making, about decisions that influence or govern our life, about who are the people whom we have given power to govern us. These are important decisions in everyday life and they must be taken in account that there is equality in society. Democracy as a form of governance can be compared with other forms. Now, democracy is not the only form of government. There are other forms of governance such as autocracy, plutocracy, dictatorship, totalitarian regimes. All over the world in different countries, people are governed in different fashions. However, democracy is the most popular and desirable. This does not mean that democracy has everything good to be offered to everybody in society. Democracy itself has its own problem. But This is the most desirable because it is based on the value of equality and equal representation of large number of people. What are these two values of equality and representation, and why do we need them? We need them because our societies are diverse. Diverse on the basis of language, religion, class, categories and large number of things. Now when we are divided, when we are diverse, we have different interests, preferences and tastes. When you are governed by one set of people, then it is possible that these particular set of people, those who have particular affiliation, social, political, linguistic or religious, they might favor their own people in the society. You should understand it in terms of, suppose there are 100 people in society and the society is divided into 20% of diverse cultural groups. Now if people from cultural group A tend to come and form government, it might be a possibility that they get inclined towards their own people. So the other set of people will not get equal representation or proper representation. That is why through process of election, we tend to ensure that people from every community come and contest election, and if at all they come or do not come, they are going to take care of the interest of large number of people. However, in autocracies, you might be knowing some of the examples of people, those who have been dictators in the past. You know about Colonel Gaddafi from Libya. You must have heard about the name of Saddam Hussein from Iraq. In the current times also, there are large number of dictators all over the world, those who rule by their power, absolute power. They do not accept dissent. Dissent means if somebody is opposing any of their idea or policy, they just have different mechanisms to put them to rest. So democracies are the most desirable form of governance as compared to other forms of governance. In this particular episode, we have discussed about the governance system, democracies, how did democracy come into existence and why democracy is desirable. We have started understanding the political institutions or political systems. These systems are influencing our everyday life. I would ask you to explore more about different forms of governance, different forms of governments, and look for some leaders, what kind of qualities they have. Sometimes even in offices we say that my boss is very democratic in nature. This means that the boss is consulting everyone while taking a decision. Or even in a democratic society, even through elections, we sometimes say that a particular leader is very autocratic. He is acting like a dictator because after getting elected through a democratic process, he may not consult people to take any decision. So these are the various permutations and combination. You are growing up now. You must be aware about the things which are happening around you. Look at the international politics. Look at the contemporary world. Look at various countries, various nations, their various leaders. Look at their characteristic features. Explore your own society. Even your house is a small miniature political system. Who decides about which matter? Who takes care of the house? Who takes care of the finances? Who governs? Who manages my international relations at the national level, or who takes care of my neighborhood? All these things are part of our everyday life and decision making, which directly or indirectly touch every aspect of our life. Political science is a very interesting subject. We experience it in everyday life. When we study it academically, it becomes a discipline. I am sure you will understand political science better when you are exploring this with examples. One more important point before we end this episode. Whenever you study any social science, keep a map handy with you because we are going to deal with questions of events, and every event tends to have certain questions like what happened, why did it happen, when did it happen, where did it happen, and whom did it influence. I gave you example of French Revolution. Similarly, American Revolution, World War I, World War II, Enlightenment, or in the history Renaissance, or something more contemporary, fall of Berlin Wall. All these things are certain events which have influenced world history, world politics, your society, our economies. And whenever you are analyzing any event, you need to know what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen, when did it happen, and whom did it influence and how did it influence. So all these things, when you are able to write these points in different compartments, your understanding will become clear, crisp clear. So keep a map and keep a matrix with you. Learning of social sciences and particularly political science will become very easy and interesting for you. In the next part of this chapter, we are going to discuss details of democracy and certain ways in which certain countries are governed. We will contrast forms of governance and try to understand that why democracy is desirable. Till then, this is the explanatory part of part 1 of the chapter. Read it, understand it and explore more about it. Thank you very much.